Rain fell hard on the silent city. In the dark back alley, something moved behind the dumpsters. It wasn't a dog. It wasn't a cat. It whispered, "Please." Eli was just a janitor. He worked night shifts at the supply depot, the kind of place no one cared about, the kind of job no one noticed. He liked it that way. No one asked questions, and he didn't have to talk to anyone. But that night, as he walked past the alleys behind the warehouse, he heard something. At first, he thought it was just the wind. Then he heard it again, a soft whimper followed by a faint voice almost like a whisper. "Please, help me." He froze. The alley was dark, full of old crates, rusted machines, and dripping pipes. Nobody sane walked into those shadows. But something about that voice pulled at him. Eli stepped closer, flashlight in hand. The beam cut through the darkness. And then he saw it, a cage, a metal cage, small, rusty, bolted shut. Inside it, curled up in a corner, was a girl, not human. She had soft lavender skin, glowing faintly in the rain. Her hair was tangled, silver like starlight. Her arms were chained inside the cage, and she was shivering like a stray animal left in the cold. Her eyes, huge and glowing blue, looked up at him in terror. She backed away, pressing herself into the far corner of the cage, as if she expected to be hit. Eli raised both hands slowly. "I'm not here to hurt you," he whispered. "I heard you calling." The girl didn't answer. She just stared at him like a broken creature. The chain around her ankle was tight. Cutting into her skin, rainwater mixed with blood at the bottom of the cage. Eli knelt down, feeling his heart pound. "Who did this to you?" he asked. Still no answer. Only that same fearful stare. He looked around. No one in sight. No cameras. No patrol bots. Whoever put her here didn't want her found. "I can't leave you like this," Eli muttered. He tried the lock. It was old and cracked. One good kick and it broke open with a snap. The girl flinched as the door swung wide. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said again, gently. "I'm taking you out of here." She didn't move, so he reached in, slowly, took off his jacket, and draped it over her shoulders. She was cold, too cold, and so thin, like she hadn't eaten in days. Finally, she whispered, "You'll be punished." Eli blinked. "What?" "They'll punish you," she said, voice trembling, "for helping me." He looked at her and sighed. "I've been punished by life already," he said. "Come on." With care, he helped her out of the cage. Her legs were weak, she could barely stand, so he lifted her in his arms. She was light as air. Eli carried her down the alley, keeping to the shadows. He didn't know what kind of trouble he was getting into. He didn't know who she was or why someone locked her in a cage like that. But one thing was clear. She wasn't a thing. She wasn't a pet. She wasn't some forgotten creature. She was a girl, and she needed saving. When he reached his apartment, he gently laid her on the couch. She winced as her back touched the cushion. Scars covered her skin. She looked at everything with fear, like she had never seen a real room before. Eli brought her a towel, some water, and soft food. She didn't eat at first, just stared at the bowl like she didn't understand what to do with it. Then, slowly, she reached out and took a bite. Her eyes welled up with tears. "What's your name?" Eli asked. She hesitated, then said, 47. He frowned. "That's not a name, that's a number." She didn't reply, just kept eating like it was the first meal she'd had in a long time. Eli sat beside her, watching her quietly. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but one thing was certain: tonight, in a world full of silence, he had heard a voice that no one else heard, and he answered. The small apartment was quiet, only the soft sound of rain hitting the window. The alien girl sat on the edge of the couch, still wrapped in Eli's jacket. Her silver hair hung low, dripping with water. Her eyes stared at the floor, unblinking, as if she was afraid even to move. Eli stood in the kitchen, making soup. He kept glancing over his shoulder, wondering if she might suddenly run or collapse. but she just sat there, frozen in place like a statue too afraid to breathe. When he brought the bowl over, she flinched. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said softly, placing the bowl on the small table beside her. She stared at the steam, rising from the soup, but didn't touch it. "Do you want a spoon?" he asked, trying to smile. She looked at him with wide, scared eyes, then slowly shook her head. With trembling fingers, she lifted the bowl to her mouth and sipped. Her eyes fluttered closed like she was tasting sunlight. "You haven't eaten in a while, huh?" Eli said, sitting down across from her. She didn't answer. He tried again. "Do you remember your name?" She blinked once, then nodded slowly, but what she said made his chest ache. 4-7? Eli leaned forward. "That's not a real name, is it?" She hesitated, then whispered, "It's what they called me. The others were 1 through 9. I was 4-7. I was the smallest, so they kept me the longest." "Who are they?" Eli asked, voice quiet. The girl wrapped her arms around herself as if hugging the pain. "The traders," she said. "The ones who sell girls like me." Eli felt a cold anger rise in his chest. He had heard rumors, dark stories about underground, markets about alien girls being caged and sold like pets. But he had never seen it until now. "I don't know who my parents were," the girl continued in a small voice. "I was born in a holding cell. They said I was lucky because I was pretty." She looked down at her hands. "Pretty ones get bought fast." Eli closed his eyes for a moment, trying to breathe. "I don't care what they told you," he said finally. "You're not a number, you're not property, and you sure as hell don't belong in a cage." She looked at him confused, like she didn't understand what those words meant. "You don't even believe it, do you?" he asked. "That you deserve to be free?" The girl's lips trembled, but she said nothing. She didn't cry. Maybe she had forgotten how. Maybe she had cried so much that there were no tears left. That night, Eli gave her a blanket and let her sleep on the couch. He didn't ask any more questions. He didn't press her. He just said, "You're safe here, 4-7, or whatever name you want." In the middle of the night, he heard movement. He quietly walked out of his room and saw her sitting by the window. She was touching the glass. With her fingertips watching the city lights, her eyes were wide, amazed. "Is this freedom?" she asked without turning. Eli stood beside her. "Not yet, but it's the start of it." She looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. "Will they come for me?" Eli's jaw tightened. "They'll have to go through me first." The next morning, she surprised him. She tried to clean the table even though she didn't know how. She poured too much water into the plant, broke a plate, and whispered sorry a dozen times, but Eli just chuckled. "You don't have to do anything to stay here," he said. Still, she kept trying, like she was afraid doing nothing would get her locked back up. Later that day, he asked again, "Do you want a real name?" She looked unsure. "I don't know any," she said. "Names are for people, not things." "You're not a thing," Eli said gently. "How about Lyra?" "It means light." She blinked, then touched her chest. "Lyra," she whispered. It was the first time he saw her smile, small and uncertain, but real. That night, as the city buzzed outside and shadows passed the windows, Lyra slept for the first time without fear, and Eli stood watch by the door. Because something inside him had changed, this wasn't just about helping someone. This was about right and wrong. And he knew now. He couldn't go back to normal life, not after hearing her story, not after seeing the scars, not after learning. Her name, Lyra, the girl who had no name, now had something more powerful than numbers. She had hope. Lyra was smiling again, a real smile this time, soft and bright. She wore a clean shirt Eli had given her, too big for her shoulders, but she didn't mind. She was learning to move around the apartment without flinching, learning that no one here would hit her, that she could breathe. Eli made breakfast, eggs, bread, and something sweet. Lyra ate quietly, still not used to hot food, still chewing slowly like she was afraid it would vanish if she blinked. Eli was just about to ask her if she wanted to go out onto the roof for some sunlight, when a sound broke through the room, a soft, steady beep. At first he thought it came from the kitchen, maybe the microwave, maybe the heater, But Lyra dropped her spoon. Her hands trembled. Eli froze, then turned. Lyra! What is that? She didn't answer. Her face had gone pale. She slowly reached up and pulled the side of her collar away from her neck. There, beneath her skin, a faint red light blinked through the flesh. Beep, beep, beep. Eli's stomach turned cold. Is that a tracker? Lyra nodded, shame in her eyes. They put it under my skin when I was small so I wouldn't run too far. I forgot it was still active. They only turn it on when someone wants me back. Eli stood, rushing to the small drawer near his tool rack. He pulled out a scanning device, old and dusty. He waved it over Lyra's neck, and the screen lit up in red, signal active, pulse sent. He cursed under his breath. They know you're gone. Lyra backed away, fear rising again. I should go, she whispered. If I run now, maybe they'll follow me and leave you alone. Eli turned sharply. You're not going anywhere. But if they find you helping me, they'll hurt you too. I don't care, Eli said, his voice calm but firm. We get that thing out of you and we run, together. He opened a dusty box from the shelf, full of old tools and circuits, but none of them were made for medical work. This was different. The implant was alien tech, organic and coded to her heartbeat. I know someone, Eli said, grabbing his coat. An old tech hacker named Milo. He used to erase IDs and fake custom stamps if anyone can help. It's him. They covered Lyra's head with a scarf and walked fast through the back alleys, avoiding cameras, skipping street bots. At one point, Lyra tripped and scraped her knee, but she didn't cry. She just got up and kept walking. Milo's place was buried deep under an old scrapyard. A single steel door with a flickering green light. Eli knocked twice, then twice more. The door buzzed open. Milo was short, round, and wore thick goggles. He stared at Lyra for a moment. Trouble, huh? He said, chewing something crunchy. Serious trouble, Eli replied. She's got a tracker in her neck, old alien slave model. They pinged her an hour ago. Milo raised an eyebrow. Then we've got less than 2. He led them inside, into a cluttered lab full of wires, blinking screens, and smells Lyra couldn't name. He sat her on a metal chair and handed her a soft cloth. Bite this, sweetheart. It might sting. Lyra looked at Eli, scared. Eli knelt beside her, holding her hand. I'm right here, he said. Don't let go. Milo powered up a strange device, part cutter, part scanner, part cooling gel. He worked fast, hands shaking but precise. As the tool buzzed to life, Lyra whimpered, eyes shut tight. She squeezed Eli's hand hard. The light under her skin blinked faster. The screen showed countdown bars. Pulse signal was about to lock. If they didn't remove it now, her location would be permanently burned into the network. Come on, Milo, Eli said, sweating. Almost got it, the man muttered, sparks flying. Then, BZ. The blinking light vanished. The scanner went black. Milo held up the tiny implant between his fingers, a twisted, bloody chip the size of a grain of rice. Tracker's dead, he said, dropping it into acid fluid. No one's finding her. Now Lyra opened her eyes, breathing fast. Her forehead was wet with sweat, but she smiled through the pain. Thank you. Eli sighed with relief, brushing her hair back gently, but Milo wasn't smiling. You bought some time, he said, but that last pulse? It got out. Eli stood slowly, his eyes narrowing. What do you mean? I mean someone knows she was here, maybe not exactly, but close. How close? Milo shrugged. Maybe a few blocks. Lyra gripped Eli's arm. They're coming, aren't they? Eli nodded slowly. Yeah, they're coming. And when they arrive, they won't knock. They'll come to take her back. But this time, she wasn't going alone. This time, the human was ready to fight. The wind howled. Through the alleyways, the streetlights flickered like dying stars. Inside Eli's apartment, Lyra stood near the window, wrapped in a thick blanket. Her eyes scanned every shadow, every rooftop, every corner. She knew they were coming. She could feel it in her bones. Eli loaded an old pulse pistol. It hadn't been used in years, but it still hummed when charged. He placed it on the table beside a second weapon, a knife he had carried during border riots long ago. "We should run," Lyra whispered. "Too late," Eli replied, not looking up. "They'll be watching the streets, the transport tubes, everything." He turned to her and handed her a small metal disc. "Put this on your chest under your shirt," he said. "It'll block low-range scanners for a few hours, maybe long enough." She nodded, her fingers trembling as she clipped it in place. Then she looked at him, voice shaking. "You don't have to do this for me." "I already did," Eli said simply. "The moment I opened that cage." Suddenly the lights in the apartment dimmed. A soft clicking noise echoed outside the door. Lyra stepped back, heart pounding. Eli grabbed the pulse pistol and moved to the peephole. He saw them. 3 tall figures in black armor, helmets with red visors, shoulder-mounted flashlights. Silent, professional, not police, not local enforcers, hunters. One of them raised his fist, then boom! The door exploded inward, splinters flew, smoke filled the air. Eli was thrown back onto the floor. He coughed, ears ringing, but he held onto the pistol. Through the smoke, a voice barked, "Where is the asset? Bring her now or die." Lyra crouched behind the old couch, covering her mouth. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't move, didn't scream, didn't run. Eli rose slowly, coughing blood. He aimed the pistol at the first armored figure and fired. The blast hit the chest plate, sparking but not stopping the man. The hunter raised his own weapon and fired back. Eli ducked, the shot tearing through the wall beside him. "You have 5 seconds," another voice yelled. 5. Eli grabbed a metal chair and hurled it, buying a second. 4. He ducked into the side hallway and fired again. The second blast knocked one hunter off balance. 3. Suddenly, smoke hissed. Through the vents, non-lethal gas thick and fast. Lyra covered her face, coughing. She tried to crawl toward the back door, but her legs were weak again. 2. The third hunter moved quickly, stepping over broken wood, scanning the room. He spotted movement behind the couch and raised his weapon. "Target locked," he said coldly. Just as his finger squeezed the trigger, Eli tackled him from behind. They crashed to the ground, weapons clattering. The hunter swung hard, punching Eli across the jaw, but Eli grabbed the man's helmet and slammed it into the floor again and again until the visor cracked and the light inside went dark. The remaining hunter shouted, "Code Red, target is resisting." He charged at Eli, but Lyra stood up, her voice shaking. "Stop." The hunter paused, his weapon still raised. Lyra stepped out from behind the smoke, her arms raised. Her voice broke, but she forced herself to speak. "I'll go with you. Just don't hurt him." Eli, bloodied and breathing hard, looked up at her in shock. "No," he croaked. "Don't?" The hunter stepped forward, cuff in hand. But Lyra took a slow breath, then stomped her foot on the loose floor panel Eli had shown her earlier. A hidden spring popped open, revealing the hidden trapdoor Eli had prepared. Idea dove in, landing hard in the crawl space beneath the apartment, dark, tight, full of old piping, but a perfect hiding spot. The hatch slammed shut above her. "Target gone," the hunter shouted, rushing forward. Eli used the moment of confusion to grab the pistol again. He fired into the hunter's side, point blank. Sparks and smoke flew as the man dropped to the floor, groaning. Silence returned, broken only by heavy, breathing and dripping water from the ruined pipes. Eli leaned against the wall, shaking. Both hunters lay unconscious. The apartment was half destroyed. He crawled to the hatch and knocked twice. It opened slowly, and Lyra peeked out, her face, her eyes wide. "You're okay," she whispered, her voice cracking. "So are you," Eli said with a faint smile, then collapsed beside her. They spent the night hiding in that small space, listening for more footsteps, but none came. In the morning, as the sun rose behind the broken skyline, Lyra curled beside him and whispered, "You risked your life for me." "You're not a thing," Eli said, barely awake. "You're someone worth saving." The sky was still gray when Lyra helped Eli sit upright. His face was bruised, his lip was bleeding, and his shoulder had turned purple, but he smiled through the pain. "I've had worse," he said. Lyra didn't smile back. She only looked at him with tear-filled eyes. "I didn't want you to get hurt," she whispered. I should have stayed in the cage. No, Eli said firmly. Don't ever say that. He placed his hand on hers. You're not meant to be in a cage, Lyra. You were meant to be free. She looked away, unsure how to answer that. She didn't know what freedom really meant. Even now, even here, her body still felt like it was being watched. Her mind still heard the voices of the traitors, the whips, the commands. Her back still ached from where they used to brand her for disobedience. Later that morning, they made a small fire in the broken heating unit. Eli brewed something that smelled sweet and warm. Lyra sat close, wrapped in a blanket. The apartment was barely standing, the doors were broken, the lights dead. But she felt safer here than she ever had in her life. Lyra, Eli said softly. Tell me what happened to you. The real story. She hesitated. Then slowly, quietly, she began to speak. I don't remember my mother's face, she said. I was taken when I was little. Maybe 3 cycles old. They said I cried too much, so they tied cloth around my mouth. I grew up in a steel room with 10 others. They gave us numbers. Mine was 47. Eli listened without speaking. She continued, her voice low and even. They made us walk in lines, kneel when ordered, eat only when allowed, and if we tried to run, they'd punish one of the others in front of us. Sometimes they picked someone at random. Her voice trembled. One time, they punished a girl who tried to protect me. They called her useless after that and sold her to the mines. She stopped for a moment, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her blanket. I stopped talking after that. Stopped looking anyone in. The eyes I thought if I was invisible they wouldn't hurt me. Eli nodded, his jaw clenched tight. His fists rested on his knees, shaking with silent rage. But he didn't interrupt her. This was her moment, her story. When I was old enough, she said, they put me in a glass display case like a doll. People came and looked at us like we were pets, I was told to smile, or they'd use the collar again. Her hands touched her neck without thinking. I tried to run once, just once. I made it 5 blocks before a drone caught me. They locked me in the cage after that, the one you found me in. She looked up at Eli, her voice cracking. I thought I was going to die there. Eli leaned forward, placing his hand over hers. Again, you didn't, he said. You made it out and now you're here. But for how long? She asked, her voice almost a whisper. I don't know how to live. I don't know how to be free. I wake up every hour expecting someone to grab me, chain me, drag me away again. Then we learn, Eli said gently. We learn together. That afternoon, Eli took her to the rooftop. The sun peeked through the clouds for the first time in days. Lyra squinted, raising her hand to block the light. It's too bright, she whispered. You'll get used to it. Eli smiled. He handed her a small plant pot, green sprouts pushing through the dirt. What's this? She asked. A promise, he said. You water it every day, care for it, and it'll grow. She looked down at the tiny plant, then up at him. You really think I can grow something? I think you already are. For the first time, Lyra didn't feel like a thing, didn't feel like someone's product. She felt like a person, a broken one, yes, but still alive, still real. That night, she asked Eli to sit by her again, but this time she didn't hide in the corner. She sat close, shoulder to shoulder, and she asked something she'd never asked anyone before. Do you believe I could, one day, choose my own life? Eli looked at her and nodded slowly. I don't just believe it, he said. I'll fight for it. She took a deep breath and whispered, I want to be free, not just on the outside, but in here too. She placed a hand over her heart. I want to know what it means to belong to myself. Eli didn't speak. He just gently squeezed her hand. And in that silence, something changed. Lyra had spoken her truth. She had said it out loud. And now, she was ready to fight for it too. The city never truly slept. Even in the early hours, its towers blinked like tired eyes. Hover drones hummed in the distance, scanning the night for heat signatures. Security bots rolled slowly down the streets, silent and deadly. And somewhere in the shadows, Lyra and Eli were running for their lives. They had to leave now. The apartment was no longer safe. After the last attack, word had spread. Someone had stolen property from the traitors. A reward, had been posted. Lyra's face, drawn from security cams, now flashed on every underground bounty board. "We don't have much time," Eli whispered. Pulling her hood down tight, he handed her a small backpack: food, fake ID, water capsules, a cloak, and one tracking jammer. "We get through Zone 8, reach the old transport rails, and ride them west," he said. "There's a colony. Out there, mostly human, no slavers, no enforcers, no collars." Lyra nodded, her jaw tight. She was no longer the girl shaking in a cage. She was still scared. But now she moved with purpose. They ducked down an alley as a patrol bot passed. Overhead, its searchlight skimmed the wall just inches from their backs. When it turned away, they bolted toward the checkpoint wall. Zone 8 wasn't a place people crossed freely. It was the dividing line between the inner city and the outlands. Only. The rich had permits, the poor had fences, the fugitives had fear. "Do we have a real chance?" Lyra asked as they reached a rusted drainage tunnel. Eli crouched, opening a loose grate. "We don't need a big chance," he said. "Just a small one, and a little bit of luck." They crawled through the narrow tunnel, knees scraping the cold stone. The stench was terrible, but neither of them complained. On the other side was freedom, or death. When they reached the end of the pipe, Eli pushed up a metal hatch. They emerged into a dead part of the city, full of broken factories and shattered windows. Old graffiti covered the walls, and vines pushed through the cracks in the steel. Lyra took a deep breath. This air smelled different. It didn't have the burn of chemicals. It smelled like rain, like soil, like forgotten things trying to grow again. But peace didn't last long. A red light blinked on Eli's wristband. "Scanner alert. Zone breach detected nearby." "They know," he whispered. "They're already scanning this district." A whirring sound cut through the sky. A hunter drone, fast and sharp, swooped down, searching the streets below. Eli grabbed Lyra's hand. "We run now." They sprinted across the old road, jumping over broken rails and scattered debris. The drone spotted them and released a loud, echoing alarm. "Unauthorized movement, submit for scan, submit for scan." Blasters fired, blue plasma bolts striking near their feet. One shot burned Eli's leg. He fell hard, gritting his teeth. Lyra turned back. "Get up," she cried, pulling him by the arm. "I'm fine," he said through clenched teeth, limping but still moving. They ducked behind an old fuel tank. Eli pulled out a flare grenade. He looked at her. "This is the last one." She nodded. "Then, let's make it count." He threw the grenade high. It exploded mid-air, a burst of light and noise, loud enough to confuse the drone's sensors. "Now!" he shouted. They ran again, this time down a service tunnel. The light at the end of the passage flickered red. Warning. Perimeter security activated. Lyra reached into her pack, pulling out the jammer. She slammed it into the wall panel just as the alarms began to rise. Static burst through the speakers, then silence. Eli looked at her with surprise. "Where'd you learn that?" She smiled faintly. "They taught me how to shut doors. Now I know how to open them too." They reached the final door, an old maintenance hatch leading to the train lines beneath the city. It was rusted shut. Eli forced the wheel with everything he had. Lyra pressed her back against it, pushing with him. Finally, it groaned open. Cold wind rushed through the tunnel. Below them, the forgotten rails stretched far into darkness. Toward freedom, Eli turned on the headlamp. "From here we ride," he said. Lyra stared down into the tunnel, then at Eli. "I'm ready," she said. They climbed down together, disappearing into the dark. Above them, the city screamed in confusion. The traders searched, the drones scanned, the bounty hunters circled. But they were too late. The girl who once sat in a cage was now running through shadows, free not just in body, but in will. And beside her, the human who chose to stand against the world, not for profit, not for glory, but because it was right. The train tunnel was cold and silent. Only the faint hum of energy lingered on the old tracks. Lyra walked beside Eli, her hand gripping his tightly. He limped slightly, still hurt from the drone strike. But neither of them spoke about the pain. They were alive and they were free. For now. Ahead, a small light blinked on the wall. They had reached the end of the zone. A hidden platform used by smugglers and exiles. Eli pressed a code into the old panel. It buzzed softly and opened. A rusted gate, Beyond it stood a large cargo crawler, a transport unit meant to carry stolen fuel and supplies to distant colonies. Now it was their ride out of the city, one last chance to disappear. An older woman in a thick coat stepped out from the shadows. She looked human, but her eyes were cybernetic, glowing faint green. "You're late," she said to Eli. "You're armed," Eli replied, glancing at her shoulder holster. The woman smirked. "Everyone out here is armed. Who's the girl?" Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady. "My name is Lyra." The woman raised an eyebrow. "Not 47?" Lyra shook her head. "Not anymore." The woman nodded slowly. "Then get in, Lyra," she said. "You've got a place in my world." They boarded the crawler and the engines rumbled to life. The walls shook, the ground trembled, and the lights inside flickered as power flowed through the core. Through a narrow window, Lyra looked back one last time, back toward the city that had caged her, sold her, branded her. The place where she wasn't seen as a person, but as a thing. Eli sat beside her, arm around her shoulders. "You okay?" "I will be," she whispered. "It just feels strange." "What does?" "Not being owned." Eli didn't speak. He just held her close as the crawler moved faster into the underground highways. Outside, signs of life faded. No more glowing towers. No more sirens. No more hunters. Only the wild hills, broken satellites, and starlight above them. 3 days passed. Lyra learned to sleep without fear. She laughed for the first time. She even helped the smuggler woman cook food and repair the crawler's comms unit. She was learning what freedom tasted like. Slowly, quietly, but truly. When they reached the human colony in the highlands, the gates opened without a scan. A tall man stepped out, wearing a red sash. He looked important, but he smiled kindly. When he saw Lyra, "We've heard about you," he said. "You're welcome here." Lyra looked at the open space beyond the gate. Fields, trees, small houses made of stone. No collars, no cages, no cameras, just people. Living, breathing, smiling. Inside the colony, she was given her own room, her own bed, her own nameplate. It said, "Lyra. Citizen, not cargo, not number, not slave." Citizen one evening as the sun set behind the red hills. Eli sat on a bench outside the community hall. Lyra sat beside him, watching birds fly across the sky. She looked stronger now, healthier, calmer, but there was still something she wanted to say. "I used to think I was broken," she said softly, "that I'd never be more than what they made me. But now I know I'm more." "You've always been more," Eli said gently. "They just blinded you to it." Lyra took a deep breath. "I want to help others," she said. "I want to find more girls like me, more kids locked in cages and bring them here." Eli nodded slowly. "Then we'll do it together." She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. Not a smile of survival, but of purpose. That night the colony held a small gathering under the stars. Lyra stood before the council, heart pounding in her chest. She had never spoken in front of a crowd, never been given permission to speak at all. But now they listened. "My name is Lyra," she said, her voice strong. "I was once treated like an animal, locked, owned, silenced. But I am not property. I am not a thing. I belong to no one, except myself." There was silence, then applause, then quiet tears. And under the stars, for the first time in her life, Lyra felt whole, not because someone saved her, but because she chose to live, because someone believed in her enough to hand her the key to her own cage.